What's up, guys? I'm thinking about making this video here the intro. Okay, all well and good, but really let's get into it in depth now. To catch everyone up to speed, Risotto Nero is a character from the series of manga and anime called JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 5, Golden Wind. He appears as one of the members of the assassin group La Squadra, who are tasked with eliminating the Giorno's group in search of the boss. There's a lot to go over in terms of the magic system of the manga, but basically Risotto Nero has this ability to control metal, and within range of any living being, it makes his methods quite deadly and undetectable.
お前はやはりスタンド使いだ。あの音と形はエアロスミスだ。やかましい。ヒーヒーこれから怯えるのはてめえの方だぜ。そこだ。奴の能力は生き物の体の中の鉄分を使って鉄のカミソリ。すでにお前は出来上がっているのだからな。
So this project for me began with the face and the head. I think this was a better strategy for me to take, as I often would come up with the body first, but individual pieces, I think for me it works best to have a focus in mind, and I think definitely paid off with this. I think the JoJo style, or Araki style, I mean, serves well with the serves best with sculpture in mind, because of the angular planes. Really makes it stand out, work in different angles quite well. Not that I'm very professional with sculpting. I can't say I'm that much professional in filming either, as you could tell, but I think the face turned out the best for me in this regard. Whether it matched the proportions to the model itself is yet to be seen. Not as perfect as I would have hoped, but still pretty alright. I could have used some more meat on the bones for the most of the limbs, for example, but the head I think I nearly knocked out of the park as far as I'm aware. But the hair for this was actually quite easy. It was just a few fronds on the front, and it was mostly draped under hood anyway, which was a plus. It wasn't really a hood, it's more like, it's kind of half of a hood and a jester hat. That's one of the cool things about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, is the character design and mainly the fashion. It's very influential for many readers and viewers and artists alike. It's very out there, and you might say, well, bizarre. I mean, I don't have to tell anyone twice. Here I'm just slowly adding the neck muscles to the head and the complicated muscle group I can't name. It's part of the neck. But it's pretty beefy, pretty muscular part, and I'll add the hood as well to it eventually, but not before the hat part itself. So these would be considered, I guess, the baubles of the jester hat. I decided to roll some polymer clay into some balls, at least 6 or 8 of them, and I put them on toothpicks and wrapped some 2-part epoxy clay around it, because I thought that was the easiest way to get it done. So here I'm starting to construct the hood hat element, and about to look real silly at the moment, but bear with me. I think an early mistake I did when starting to sculpt was buying too many tools. Sometimes it's just best to have like 2 or 3 and then just go from there, and I think that resulted in some unevenness in the final. So now I'm attaching the baubles to the head, and it's mostly going off without a hitch. Be aware the next shot is gonna look pretty sus, but bear with me. And just because we have the head nailed down doesn't mean we can't take the body into consideration. And I did that here by sketching out a quick diagram for myself. So now I'm going over a discarded idea of adding the R to his belt, but I used polymer clay here, but I decided to go with 2-part epoxy for the final result, and then just paint over that. Just some quick smoothing. You use the table here. Pretty effective, I'd say. Here I'm just drilling holes in the wood to make the stone for the body itself. Then begin to paint the figure. I start with like just normal miniature paints, and then I move on to markers, like using acrylic paint markers for like really detailed areas. This is just a primer layer for the skin I'm doing right now, and you'll see me skip later at the skin, and then I'll paint over the blacks of the hood itself. So now I've formed a bit of an armature for the body, and now I'm just wrapping smaller wire around the main wire just to give the clay a bit more to cling to when it's baked. I wouldn't say this is an unusual position to put the feet in, but it's something to think about when posing your figure, is how it'll stand and how they'll affect the figure, the placement of the limbs overall. So here you can see like he's kind of lifting his foot off his heel, and that's going to affect how the leg moves in an anatomical sense. So here I'm slowly moving up and down the leg structure, just adding bits of clay and subtracting like parts of the buttocks, because I'm going to be adding the bottom part of the cloak, I think, to the overall figurine. and I'll need to think about how I'm gonna add that in a, you know, in a way that's stable and will be supported. And I'm gonna run into some issues later on that I'll go over later in this video. It's important for you to condition your clay by just either rolling on it or using a pasta roller, or you know, use your hands, although it's made me sore in the past, but you can totally do that. So this part of the clay serves as the skin I'm going to be adding to his like upper torso area. I use a bit of foil for the main body just to bulk it up, not too much because I want like the clay to like bond well through the baking and have enough of it so that cracks won't form when it's too thin. So this was quite fun, just making the upper torso and adding in all the abdomen muscles and, you know, basically the abs, or it seems like a six-pack I've given him. Just I think it's appropriate. It's mostly most of the characters in JoJo are pretty muscular anyway. Kind of a lean musculature, not so much Arnold Schwarzenegger musculature. But yeah, I think it turned out pretty well, all things considered. It's funny how I started with the head, but at the same time I've learned that it's slightly too big, but otherwise not too bad in my opinion. My hair does get in these shots and that's objectively bad, no question about it though. So each part is seemingly all coming together, and I'm smoothing out bits of the clay to better represent like his rib cage and his shoulders. I did okay. I think he has those rounded shoulders you see in the anime and manga. Just off the edge of them. Here I add the holes in the butt, because that was the first plan that sort of fell through, was that I was gonna add like when I was trying to add the bottom of the cape. So right now I'm making the hands with 2-part epoxy and adding the trimmings of that to other pieces of the overall design. Here I'm gonna show in a few seconds me adding 2-part epoxy to his severed foot as it was seen in the anime, and add on like the staples that his own like stand or his abilities had made. It's usually pretty sticky, the epoxy, but seemed to be rather tricky here, maybe because there wasn't that much. So then I made the hands with the epoxy. It's quite tricky. My idea was that I would add thicker pieces onto it in order to carve into it later. I don't think it was quite the result I was happy with, so I added like some polymer clay like knuckles onto the hand. And then later I would use like the hair dryer, so headphone warning. The good thing about polymer clay is that you can go extra fine if you have a good medium clay, and you can only take a minute to heat up if you use like a blow dryer, for example. The downside is the 2-part epoxy actually softens when you use the blow drying tool, and there was a bit of a delicate balance to use it in a way that doesn't completely sabotage it. So I began to paint more of the hood, and I really like this primer. It's very flows pretty well from the brush, and covers. It probably needs at least 2 coats to be really good, but otherwise I enjoyed using it. I think it would probably be better to keep his hair white, but it also adds a bit of accent to his overall design. But otherwise, yeah, soon I start to add like touches of red for the eyes, as I'm doing here, but also I give it sort of comic book lines on the face, just for style points. Nothing really much else. I think it looks pretty cool regardless. Okay, so my first plan for the bottom of his cape, I'm assuming it's like his overall hood and the bottom half that's flowing out. I tried to make that a polymer clay, but I was probably gonna run into some cracking when I had baked it. It's not like cos clay in that way, in which it could be more flexible. I've never used it that much. It's really too expensive to ship, I guess, right now. But yeah, there was too many cracks, and so in a moment you'll see I resorted to using another epoxy clay to add a base for it. So I started painting the pants here because at the time I knew I was going to take off like the bottom half of the cape in order to paint the rest of it. But I thought the cracks that were developing were too much trouble, and so I decided to go with plan B. Okay, so here I attached the epoxy with some toothpicks, but there was a weird looking area, and I decided to take matters into my own hands and do some grinding. Paint markers really helped in this case with the in-between spaces. I imagine a thin brush could also achieve the same results, but I liked how these new ones, these colors came out. So yeah, mistakes do happen, unfortunately, and luckily I had some super glue on hand. So it's actually not that bad. I think another piece did chip off, but the same thing still applies. So yeah, these would turn out to be grey in the final version. Didn't want to verge too far away from the source material. So I made the cape parts into 3 parts. One is epoxy clay, one's air dry, which is the end of the white part, and the middle is like some cheap air dried clay that I used for a filler, and then I waited for that to dry and just sanded the whole thing and then painted it white in 2 layers. I think it turned out pretty well. So I had dropped the head actually once on the ground and it broke off the bauble, but also the tab part on the bottom of the neck where the toothpick is. I decided to put in some baking soda and super glue into the little slot where it would slip in, and that turned out to work pretty well. Worked like a charm. I saw it in another video and turned out pretty successful. Now I know I was all over the place in this video, but if you guys have any advice or things that I can improve, let me know in the comments. Helps out a great deal. I'm gonna try and streamline this process as best as I can. That way I don't waste too much time or materials when making this sculpture. Speaking of which, here's the final result. Enjoy!